I had a entire pot pie.
Man, I'm just loaded up with cheese and grease right now. And I can't think of a better feeling for starting a podcast.
Definitely inside.
R.I.P. your colon.
Oh, God.
That's
The
it.
horn.
It sounded. Here we are, another episode of Running Out the Clock. Woo! Week 4 is no more, and we are ready to discuss it. It was upset central all across the country. However, there's actually only one upset in the SEC. And so we were kind of the boring conference, but a few things to discuss, of course, in the first weekend where we saw a huge amount of SEC versus SEC competition. SEC on SEC crime, some would say. It just means more, y'all. It just means more. So a lot to discuss. I'm Joseph. We got Keith. We got Ro. And we got Chandler, who is here on a caveat because he's supposed to be serving a 1-game suspension. But he has appealed that suspension. And we'll hear his appeal in a little bit. But first of all, gentlemen, we got to open up the episode the same way we always open up the episode. Talking about the Noles.
Talking about the nose.
There's our Talking About the Noles theme song. The only reason we let Chandler into the recording session is to sing the Talking About the Noles theme song.
All right. See you guys.
Oh, the Noles got to win. I want you guys to real quick give me a one-word reaction to them beating Northern Illinois. Chandler, I'll start with you. Keith?
No.
Bro?
So many more words than you were supposed to say.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was 2 more, but it still was more.
I don't fit inside of a box.
Keith?
Man. I'm way too big.
Keith, I hate to have muted you, but I muted you. You were given one word. And Keith, don't unmute so quickly. Accept your punishment, son. All right, Ro.
Embarrassment?
I like that you put a question mark at the end of it.
To be embarrassed by a win.
Yeah.
Right, if there was a way.
Florida State found a way.
If there was a way.
Okay, so I got that from Cam Akers because that's what he tweeted after their game was embarrassed.
Oh, okay.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see him back in a Mississippi school next year.
Hines Community College. A transition year, guys. A transition.
Last chance you.
Yes, going to East Mississippi to clean things up and then get on out of there. All right, we also like to start off our episodes by giving somebody credit that probably isn't going to get as much credit as they deserve this week. Chandler, I'll start with you. You got anyone in mind who deserves some credit that is not getting any credit?
I do have somebody in mind, and that individual is David Shaw, head coach of the Stanford Cardinal. I don't know if you guys stayed up late to watch that game or not, but it was absolutely incredible. In Oregon looks like they're for real again. They look like they've kind of finally started to hit their stride. Maybe still a year away, but Stanford was down big, and David Shaw, who I think is one of the most underrated coaches in the whole country. I mean, I think if you put him in a program that had the resources and the accessibility of like an Alabama or something, he just would be he'd be the guy that we talked about all the time. So mad shout out to David Shaw and the Stanford Cardinal.
He has continued a heck of a program there at Stanford. Really impressive. A whole lot of credit. Good shout out there. Keith, who do you got?
I want to give a shout out to the fans of the Nebraska Cornhuskers for staying with the program through what's going to be a terrible year.
They got the coach of the defending national champions, though.
Right, exactly.
Sure did, but they're going to go over this year probably.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's a rough start to Scott Frost's tenure there, but they have openly said that, he's their guy, and they trust him moving forward. I think this is one of those rare situations in which they probably understood that it was going to be a bigger rebuild than they would have liked when they made the hire. But, they got the guy they wanted. So, absolutely. And we hope the best for them.
Not really.
that could be a pain to deal with. Ro, who you got?
I'm gonna give a shout out here to Mark Stoops for looking like Bill Dauterive off King of the Hill. Try and question that. Nobody gives the guy credit because he's a real life Bill Dauterive. Follows his life after Bill too.
I mean, I'd say we should do a segment where we talk about like which SEC coach is which King of the Hill character, but they all are very easy to answer because it's like Ed Orgeron's Boomhauer. Like we already know that, so it wouldn't even be a fun segment to do.
Oh man,
Damn it,
Wouldn't be fun.
Coach Orgeron.
I'm gonna give a shout out to one of my favorite voice actors, H. John Benjamin, who's appearing in Arby's commercials. He deserves more credit for what he does.
We've got the beef.
Love H. John Benjamin and his "this is how I talk" kind of voice. So love him. Anyway, I'm gonna give a huge shout out to, and they are getting some credit, but I don't think you can give the Army Black Knights enough credit for almost pulling off an upset, because teams that almost pull off an upset don't get the kind of credit that they deserve. You know, they took Oklahoma to overtime, and I mean, in a lot of ways, kind of deserved that victory, and we're not able to earn it. But took number 5 to overtime. They're currently sitting at, I think they've got a decent record. I forgot. I had it right in front of me and I closed it, but it doesn't matter. But Army gave it their all, overlooked squad, and I just want to praise them for their performance this weekend.
And then I think we should also criticize Oklahoma for not respecting the troops.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. All right. Chandler, I'm sure this is a difficult time for you. It's a difficult time for all of us at running out the clock. But of course, for anyone that was listening to last week's episode, Chandler neglected to give a prediction at the end of the episode, and was given a warning that if he neglected to give a prediction, that he would not be invited to the next recording session. I almost said recruiting session. That's wouldn't even make any sense given the context.
We're going to recruit listeners.
Talking about Cruton. So we did feel like we deserved to let Chandler air an appeal to this and let us decide in the moment here whether we will allow him to continue in the rest of this episode. So Chandler, I will give you the floor now for your appeal. Why do you think that you should be allowed to appeal this decision and continue in this recording session?
Okay, so just start off by saying that in the criminal justice system, sexually based offenses are considered especially heinous. In New York City, these dedicated detectives who investigate these vicious felonies are members of an elite squad known as the Special Victims Unit. These are their stories.
Dun, dun.
Dun 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 dun. I just felt like since I'm giving a defense and I'm giving some reasons here that I felt like we needed to just because it's my understanding that that's how every actual court case begins.
Yes.
That whether it's a sexually based offense or not, it starts with that. So
yeah. Law and Order was actually a documentary series.
Yes,
most people don't understand that.
It was entirely based on the truth. Let me start with an apology. The first part, and we addressed this off the air. I was in the midst of a very emotional, trying time due to having misplaced around $350,
which is not a fun amount.
Which I later found out I had actually done something incredibly smart with it, and then it was so smart that I forgot what I had done with it, and I found it. So it was like a week later. So no big deal. So I was flustered there. The second thing is, I was so overwhelmed with love for my country and love for democracy and all things that stand for capitalism and goodness, that when the mere thought of socialism was brought up on this show, I just couldn't do it. And for that, I'm very sorry. But it seems like my only crime here is loving America too much.
All right. He's trying to pull the patriotic card. He is pulling the classic defense of referring to soccer as a socialist sport. I mean, as you mentioned, you are given the right in this country, God bless America, to have a a jury of your peers, and I can think of no more peer people here compared to you than Keith and Roe. So I'm going to turn it over to Keith and Roe to determine your fate here for the rest of this episode. Gentlemen, do you respect this appeal, and can Chandler continue? Keith?
Peer people. I don't know why it came out like the Hot Pockets tune, but if there's anything that describes us the best, it's a group of Hot Pockets.
That's us.
True. That's true.
I'm going to go in and change all of running up the clock's description on all of social media is imagine a sports podcast run by 4 Hot Pockets. And that's all it's going to say.
I'm for it.
That's all it's going to say.
That being said, since we're 4 Hot Pockets running a show, we have to have our 4th Hot Pocket back. We can't have 3 Hot Pockets.
All right. Keith is
That's
in
not how it
favor.
works.
Keith is in favor. Roe, what about you?
The Court of Appeals hears the case before us. We've taken into consideration both parties, both prosecution and defense. We've come to the conclusion, is this court's opinion, that Chandler has made a good case for himself. A lot of evidence to support all of his points. A lot of genuineness. With that having been said, I very much would like to reestablish and lift Chandler's 1-game suspension and get him right on the field because my fantasy team is really suffering with Le'Veon Bell out. And I'm thinking that maybe if I let him back on, maybe he'll be open to a trade because he doesn't like it, and I'm not liking it right now either.
I mean, if that's the deal in front of me, send me your offers.
All right, deal.
I mean, it is a jury of your peers, but I do want to point out, we are totally open to bribery here. I mean, there's nothing against that. So, all right. So,
law school.
Keith is in favor. Roe is accepting a bribe. So it seems like Chandler's back in for the episode. Congratulations, Chandler. On having
The court people.
It's a good thing you didn't do something extremely heinous like receive free T-shirts from a booster. All right. Last week.
Coach's couch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, last week I'll just run through the scores real quick in the entirety of the SEC in week 4. Number 2, Georgia defeated Missouri 43-29 in a very odd and oddly entertaining game. Ole Miss beat Kent State 38-17 in a game that I think started on Friday and ended this morning, Sunday morning. Number 1, Alabama beat Texas A&M 45-23. It was a very entertaining first quarter or half for a little while, and then Bama for a while. South Carolina defeated Vanderbilt 37-14 in the battle to determine whether Vandy was faking it. This season, LSU had to hold off La Tech late in the game, but then was able to blow it open for a 38-21 victory. That's the number 6 Tigers, now climbing up to number 5. Just so you guys know, there's a big thing. Of course, the Kentucky Wildcats pulled off the victory over the Mississippi State Bulldogs 28-7. I guess I didn't realize it was 28-7. I stopped watching the last several minutes. Honest to God, thought it was 21-7. Florida defeated rival Tennessee 47-21 in a game where we're not entirely sure if Tennessee was there or not. And Auburn defeated Arkansas 34-3. There's the quick score rundown. Let's discuss some of these games in detail, and let's start with the first one mentioned, Georgia and Missouri. Georgia had to go to nearby Columbia, Missouri, to face the Missouri Tigers. In my observation, it was a very odd game where it was Georgia could never quite really pull away from Missouri, but Missouri could also never quite get over the hump to make it a much closer game. It seemed like every time one of them scored and it seemed like it was going to go one way, the other team got an instant touchdown. Very odd game. We'll start with the newly reinstated Chandler Rowland here. Chandler, what's your biggest takeaway from this particular game, Georgia and Missouri?
I think my biggest takeaway is that Drew Lock is for real. I mean, I don't think that's surprising to anybody, but I think I kind of wanted to see him do it against a really, really good defense, and because it seemed like maybe at times last year he struggled against good teams, and was not great against bad teams, and I mean, it just looked like from the part of the game that I got to watch, and I'm pulling up the actual stats right now, but from the part of the game I got to watch, he looked like he played. He just made a lot of big plays, and I'm seeing right now he was 23 for 48 for 220 yards and interception, which is admittedly not a great line, but it just seemed like he was making a lot of big plays, and just kind of through his ability to throw the ball, they were able to open up the run game, and he had 5 carries for 22 yards and a touchdown. So I think he looked really good, and that was kind of one of the things I was looking for.
I fully agreed. It's we've been praising him a lot, so we needed to see him do it against better competition. And I mean, it wasn't his fault they lost. It was a combination of the Missouri defense just didn't really show up like they should have, and that Georgia is just good. And
I think it goes back to a question that we had before the season started. Was how much better can their defense get? And the answer from yesterday was not much.
Right?
No. They're not good.
No, feel bad for him, but hey, at this time next year he'll be making money in the NFL, and good for you, Drew Lock.
Yep.
Keith, when you look at these two SEC West teams, so far Georgia has defeated what we thought going into the season would be maybe 2 of the biggest contenders in the East. If we had to guess the top 4 teams, it would have been Georgia, South Carolina, Missouri, Florida, and then Kentucky somewhere in there, right? And so now they've defeated South Carolina, they defeated Missouri. What do you think of the Georgia Bulldogs right now, Keith, in terms of how solid a team they are?
Yeah, what's impressive about them on offense is that they're just incredibly well balanced, and no one's really like an elite all-star that's just carrying the load for the whole team, but everyone's good, and they're well coached, and they're just disciplined on offense. So there's just not a whole lot of room for error for whoever's playing them. And obviously their defense is extremely talented, very athletic. And they took a gunslinger in Drew Lock and held him without any passing touchdowns, which is impressive because he's obviously very, very good at what he does. If somebody jumps up and does something, they're still the class of the East,
For sure. And that's the question there, Ro, is if you look at the other competition in the East right now between Florida and Kentucky, the 2 teams that Georgia has not played yet, do you see either of those teams so far in the year, the way they've looked, do you see them posing a threat to the Georgia Bulldogs?
No, of course not. Absolutely not. I don't even have to explain it. I mean, maybe Kentucky is better than we thought, but come on now. I mean, like, Drew Lock's the best quarterback in that. That's the thing. I heard him talk about it on game day. So this is the type of Georgia team that they'll play however you want to play. If you want to throw the ball all down the field and score 50 points, we'll score 55. And if we want to get in a gridiron lockdown defensive battle, well, we'll stop you on the run and do that way and just manage the clock. They're a good team. Nobody's getting close to them. I mean, if Drew Lock and his accuracy and all that good, I mean, you're right. He's going to be NFL this time next year, having a great life. I mean, don't feel too bad for the guy. But, like, yeah, I just don't see anybody touching them.
I just really want to see what sort of future is in store for future Cleveland Browns quarterback Drew Lock. Because I fully expect the Browns to continue their tradition of just drafting another quarterback year after year. But, yeah, Georgia, balanced offense for sure. We saw a solid we're joined by the future 5-star. Mr. Judson Rowland has joined us on the podcast right now. Grinning and bouncing. Good to have you, sir. But Jake Fromm put together, it was an efficient little game, 13 of 23, 260 yards, 3 touchdowns. A lot of those touchdowns being very long passes, which also were very big, like run after catch passes. So it's not like all those yards were solely because of him. But he did have one interception, but he averaged 11 yards a pass. I mean, solid day from Fromm. Elijah Holyfield, 90 rushing yards on 14 attempts. DeAndre Swift, 71 rushing yards on 16 attempts. I do like, though, the question that Chandler sent us in our group text during the game of sometimes it's legitimately hard to see if Jake Fromm is like an awesome quarterback or just not. Like he just is. He's an odd guy to watch play because he will pull out a play that is really awesome, and then you'll see him the next drive, and he just kind of looks.
Well, I mean, he's a guy to me so far that looks like, and this is going to sound so obvious when I say it, but he sounds like he's really, really good when his receivers are wide open, and then when they're not, he seems like he struggles. And to me, that's the difference in. To me, that's the difference in a really good quarterback is that a really good quarterback can make something happen. I think DeAndre Francois, I know we're always making fun of the Knowles, but I think DeAndre Francois is a great example of this because if you go back a couple of years, I think it was the start of the 2016 season, Ole Miss and Florida State played each other, and Florida State came in with a lot of hype. Ole Miss came in with a lot of hype. And everybody's excited about this game. Ole Miss gets up big, and then all of a sudden, Francois just shreds the Ole Miss defense, and they come back and they win. But if you go back and you look at what was really happening there, Ole Miss is playing 10 and 15 yards off the receivers, so he's just chucking to open receivers the whole time. And since he's played good, and every time he's played good defenses since, he's looked really bad. And so it's just a matter of like with Jake Fromm. He played last year, had really good games against a lot of teams where he was throwing to open receivers. But then when he was when he played some great defenses, especially like Auburn there at the end of the last regular season game or the next last regular season game, and then against Alabama in the championship, he really struggled in those games where receivers were having trouble getting space. So that's kind of the reasoning for that question for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great observation. He really does. And I mean, and we have to keep in mind with him, he's a true sophomore.
Yeah.
He's a true sophomore. I mean, what is he? He's got to be 20 years old maybe at this point, 19 or 20. And he was put into that position because of injury last season and won the starting job and did well, So now he's in there. I got to give some credit to them for not trying to force a Justin Fields issue. And playing with Fromm and playing well with Fromm and not trying to just, make it so that like Fields comes in as a change of pace type of,
Well, we're just not going to vilify one of these kids. I mean,
exactly. That's exactly it. So quit asking.
Yeah. I mean, if you ask again, I'm going to literally murder you.
Yeah. Which is totally fair. You've been warned. All right. So Georgia is able to hold off Missouri. It seems like this is one of those matchups where Missouri can't really feel bad about it. They'll be fine for the rest of the year, especially if they can get a couple of games in which their defense plays above this caliber. But they're not going to be going up against Georgia week in and week out. So moving forward should be okay. We'll swap over to the big upset over on the weekend in the SEC, and that's where Kentucky continues their winning ways, jumping into the top 25 this week, defeating the Mississippi State Bulldogs out there at Kroger Field, prestigious Kroger Field.
I laughed every time they said that.
Yeah, which is the funniest stadium or field name ever.
Is it better or worse, though, than Papa John's Arena?
Well, seeing as Papa John's kind of got milkshake ducked, it's better than Papa John's Stadium or whatever, because I don't think it's going to exist much longer.
No.
You've got this nice new stadium? Well, we regret to inform you this stadium is a racist.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. We drink your milkshake. We drink it up. That's what I thought of when you said milkshake duck. But
I love milkshake duck. Pixelated boat.
How's it going? But Kentucky's able to pull off the victory, 28-7. Again, not 21-7, 28-7. Ro, do you want to go ahead and start first and get some frustrations out in terms of your biggest takeaway from this matchup? Oh God, I'm sorry, Ro. I shouldn't have brought it up.
It wasn't good all around. Sloppy. It was raining. Beth Mowens was the announcer.
Awful.
Tony, whatever his name was, who was not watching the game. You know?
No, they're one of the worst broadcasting duos right now.
Oh my God! Like truly, how do those people have a job? I mean, we do this for fun, and like we would be so much better at that because we would just watch the game. You know,
It wouldn't be close.
Oh man! But aside from that, you know, the offensive line issues. My goodness, 5 or 6 false start penalties. Regardless how bad the refs are, when you do crap like that, like you're not, like that's not. It's not going to get you that championship that we had thought that we might be able to contend for. I mean, like, pretty much this team, the way that my feeling after watching State, Kentucky, you're still not going to beat Georgia, but you're going to finish second this year. State, I mean, I would feel pretty good about 7-5. That's how I feel. Oh man, it just was so bad all the way around. It was just like it felt like regression is what it felt like, which led to my own depression.
Yeah, I'm noticing that. That's you got a real solid emotional overreaction to the game, and I like that.
Yeah, dude, I very much do.
This is what sports is all about right here.
Oh yeah,
this is what sports is all about. Kentucky's defense came to play as they did against Florida a few weeks ago, as they have so far. They've got some of the best. And I mean, if you want to talk about people that don't get enough credit, I mean, they are now, but people that didn't get enough credit coming into the year, some of the best linebackers in the conference play for the Kentucky Wildcats.
Mm-hmm.
Some really good pass rushers in particular. And the pass rush was, I mean, absolutely on fire the other night. What's that?
His name was like Hall or something. And his last name, they said it 1,000 times.
No, it was his name was and I was going to make a joke about this until he went off for the Bills today. His name was Josh Allen.
Right, Allen.
I was going to say, hey, it's not the first time a guy named Josh Allen made an offensive line look bad, but then Josh Allen balled out today.
And hurdled a man. I just want to. If you haven't seen the video of that, Josh Allen hurdled a Viking player. It was beautiful. But Keith, you made the observation that Kentucky's defense has been consistently good so far this year. What was your impression of that Wildcat defense right here in this game, and how they were able to shut down what had up until now been a potent Mississippi State offense?
Yeah, I mean, we've already kind of talked about it. Their pass rush is up to this point maybe the best in the entire league. They have an incredibly athletic front seven, and their DBs are very rangy. They're all like 6'3" and have a wingspan of like a C-130. Yeah, like they're just big people. They're fast. They can cover the entire field very quickly. So you're not going to pass on them a whole lot, mostly because their front seven gets to you first. But if the ball gets in the air, it's a 50-50 ball, no matter where anybody is. It's just they're a very annoying defense. I'll put it that way. But it was frustrating watching Florida just kind of toil in vain against them, and it looked like the same thing happened with State. You know, it's just they're a frustrating defense.
Yeah, let's look at I'm pulling up the Kentucky roster right now, and on their website, this is how they have it listed. Cornerback Lonnie Johnson Jr. 6'3", 206. Cornerback Derek Beatty Jr. 6'3". Cornerback Chris Westry 6'4". Cornerback Michael Nesbitt 6 foot even. Cornerback Cedric Dort Jr. 5'11". How did that guy even get a scholarship?
What a midget.
Kick him off the team.
Yeah. Cornerback Dominique Williams 5'10". He's gone. Cornerback Stanley Garner 6'1". Defensive back, I don't know what the difference here is. I guess those are their safeties. Defensive back Jamari Brown 6'1". Defensive back Jalen Scott 5'10". Defensive back Emmanuel Bowie 5'9", so whatever. But
Those guys out here.
yeah, a lot of I mean, how many they had 3 different corners that were 6'3" or 6'4". So really rangy guys for sure. Really rangy guys. But on the flip side of that, and Chandler, you kind of mentioned when we were watching the games and talking about it, but maybe the most surprising thing was a veteran Mississippi State offensive line committing just about every error on every single play. What was going wrong there? Why do you think they were looking so totally lost on offense?
Everything was going wrong. What went right for them?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, looking at Ro already mentioned it, but I was looking at the breakdown of the penalties, and I think of the 16 penalties that were called, at least 7 of them were procedural. So you're talking false start, delay of game, illegal formation, those kinds of things that a veteran offensive line should not be doing, and a veteran quarterback should not be doing. And so, I know there was some conversation about the officials and things like that. And I admit I was only able to listen to the Kentucky broadcast, so I probably didn't get the clearest depiction of what was really going on. But those procedural penalties are not really subjective.
No, not at all.
and those things are, and then also I didn't realize this until today either. It seems like it's a pretty stark turn from where Dan Mullen had Mississippi State. State's currently 124th and 100 out of 130 in penalties. So that through 4 games, it has been a major Achilles heel for them, and they just haven't played anybody that has been able to test them on that yet. And kind of looking at them, I had some suspicions about their offensive line and about their offensive line and Fitzgerald's ability to throw, just to kind of just seeing what would happen, and I thought there would be a defense that was going to test them. I didn't think it was going to be Kentucky.
Yeah.
I thought, I was looking and I was thinking, like, this is a team that, maybe, LSU's front 7, Alabama's front 7 are going to give them some trouble. But I mean, if Kentucky is giving them that kind of trouble, then that's a big problem early. And it's not to say that Kentucky's not good, because they clearly are. I mean, they're 4-0. They've beaten a couple of big name teams, but it's going to be hard to argue that Kentucky's more talented than Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. It's going to be hard to argue that they're more talented than these teams that they've continually finished several spots behind in the recruiting rankings. And the other stat that jumps out at me, that is, I don't know how to put this on anything but coaching. Kylan Hill had, I think, 7 touches on the night.
Right.
I mean, 4.
Well, he had 4.
He had 4 carries.
4 rushing
carries. He had a few catches.
Rushes, 3 catches, and I'll go back a few years ago, since Keith relates every other game to a Florida game he's seen. I'll relate it to an Ole Miss game I've seen.
Shots fired.
But if you go all the way back to the ancient times, to the long ago, to 2009.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's forever ago. I don't think we had technology then. But Ole Miss went as the number 4 team in the nation. They went and they played against South Carolina in South Carolina.
I watched that game at a wing stop on State Street in Jackson, Mississippi.
It was a debacle. I mean, top to bottom, absolute debacle. But if you watch the game, Ole Miss did not start to give the ball to Dexter McCluster until the 4th quarter. And when they did, he was getting 10, 11, 12 yards.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and so you're watching the game and you're like, you've got this guy, give him the ball. If you come out with a game plan to get Kylan Hill the ball and you still lose, then you tip your cap to the other team for scheming and playing him well. But when you don't put the ball in your best player's hands as many times as you possibly can, and I think Eris Williams had 8 carries, and it's like, I don't know. That just seems messed up to me.
That was the most mind-boggling thing, and that was maybe the biggest takeaway I saw, was that this whole game seemed to be like the stark reminder that this is a first-year head coach, in
Yeah.
playing his first SEC game. And so the game plan just was not really there. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't agree that Kylan Hill's the best player on the offense, but he is a player that fits Moorhead's offense very the best, his style. Yeah. And so the potential for Kylan Hill to do something is higher than any other offensive player, except for maybe Nick Fitzgerald. And so when you have when you have a defense that is trying to stop the run, so you come out with a game plan that's trying to get a vertical, passing game going that Moorhead likes, and then the pass rush disrupts everything, and you never adapt to it at all, and you never try to do anything differently, and you never try to get the ball. Yeah, that's entirely coaching. That was maybe the biggest takeaway I saw from Mississippi State, is that this was the wake-up call for, okay, coach, this is the SEC now. Yeah. This is the conference play. You can't you can't do the stuff you have been doing.
The other thing I think that's concerning, and it's kind of like the statistics don't necessarily jump off the page at you, because I think that Kentucky only racked up about 300 yards, which by any standard is by any standard in college football now is a really, really good number to hold a team to. But it just seemed like Benny Snell was just running at will on a team that do what.
I was agreeing. I'm remembering everything you're saying.
I mean,
right. I forgot about him too. Yeah.
It just seemed like he was running at will on a team that supposedly has built this reputation as having a really, really nasty front seven. And I mean, that was the main reason that I thought State was going to win the game, even if they struggled offensively, was that Kentucky just wasn't going to be able to get anything going, because I don't think their quarterback is a particularly good passer. And he really didn't do just a ton of damage, but it was all Snell, and it was just Snell pretty much at will doing what he wanted when he wanted to.
Well, Snell's going to do that pretty much against anybody. Kentucky has an extremely aggressive and physical offensive line.
Yeah,
and that was something that really stood out in the Florida game. Whoever called that game did a really good job, and. Definitely not.
It was probably a Stoops brother, because there's 38 of
them. But he was talking about how you could tell from the body language of the Florida defensive line, even in like the late first half, that they were over how Kentucky was playing. Like, they wanted none of it. They were getting in their stances late. They weren't leaning forward. And when offensive lines see that, they get amped up a little bit more, because they know that whoever they're playing against is just done. The stats for this game are really, really ugly outside of Benny Snell doing Benny Snell things. Kentucky only ran like 60 plays. There's basically like 120 plays total run, and that's kind of bizarre in this day and age with the up-tempo pace of most offenses. Usually someone's around 75 or 80 and someone else is around 60. It's never that low. Nick Fitzgerald carried the ball 16 times for 20 yards and had a long of 12.
Right.
So basically, outside of that one run, he didn't do a whole. It was just an ugly, ugly game. Even on the Kentucky side of the ball, outside of Snell, it was just a really bizarre game.
Yeah, and this is what I'll say about Snell. At halftime of the game, Benny Snell did have a very, very good 61 rushing yards and a touchdown. And also at halftime, Nick Fitzgerald was 10 of 17 for 113 yards passing. So both were on pace at halftime for a really good game. In the second half is really where everything fell apart for Mississippi State. Everything started to go very well for Snell. So a lot of Snell's stats really came as the game went on. And some of that comes down to something that, I said to you guys, and it frustrates me no matter who I'm watching, but when the pace of a game is entirely dictated by officiating, as this one was, it's frustrating to watch. And it takes away from even the good stuff that the winning team like Kentucky has done. And that's why I'm glad that we were able to focus on how good the defense was, how well Benny Snell was for the entirety of the game. He was doing what he does, yards after contact, all that stuff. Of course, the Kentucky touchdown at the end of the first half came off of a non-call on offensive pass interference that got them to the goal line. Not saying that they wouldn't have scored otherwise, but it kind of helps when you can get down to the goal line, or you could get extra 15 yards off of that. Later in the game, you had the one particular moment in which a Kentucky tight end grabbed a Mississippi State defensive back and threw him to the ground, and the defensive back was called for pass interference.
Classic pass interference call. Classic call.
Yeah, exactly. It was textbook pass interference on the defensive back. He shouldn't have shoved his face mask into the Kentucky tight end's hand. So when you have stuff like that and you're like, it disrupts everything. There was later in the game when it was still close, a moment in which there was a flag thrown for pass interference against Kentucky that was picked up and waived. And then the next drive, Terry Wilson underthrows a ball into double coverage, and they throw a pass interference flag on that against me. It just was, when you have officiating that is that bad on the non-subjective stuff, or that overwhelming on the non-subjective stuff, like you have a false start. Yeah, you're not going to accidentally call a false start when an offensive lineman jumps up before the snap, but when you have that sort of stuff happen a lot, it just, the flow gets completely disrupted and controlled by officiating, which then, Kentucky grabbed momentum at that point, which helped them out tremendously. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to say that it was like the officiating controlled or won the game for Kentucky or anything like that, but it's frustrating to me to watch a game, no matter who's playing, and see it being dictated. Look at the NFL right now and how many roughing the passer calls there are in the first 3 weeks of the season. It's like twice, if not three times as many at this point in the season as it was last year. And it's drawing a lot of ire. There's a lot of awkward officiating going around, and it happened in this game, and it really dictated a lot of the tempo in the second half. Kentucky took full advantage of it and absolutely did everything right. And they deserved to win the game. I hope that's very clear that they deserve to win the game. The only thing I'm really frustrated at is watching officiating control a game, because there's always at least one every year where that's what happens, So anyway, we'll get all that out of the way now, and talk about the big question of the game. This upset that keeps Kentucky going before their inevitable second half of the season collapse, as per tradition. But does this say more? I'm going to go back to you again, Ro. Does this say more about Mississippi State, or does this say more about Kentucky?
Say more about Kentucky, I think. When I think about it, I think they are a very talented football team at the end of the day. Solid defense. Every facet of their defense is very good. I also think what it says about Mississippi State is that we are very much not a contender, unfortunately. I don't think that we, moving forward, it'll be interesting to see how this game, how we respond to this game next week with another emotional game against Dan Mullen. This game, there were lots of Twitter jabs going back and forth before the game. If I was a head football coach of a college, just no Twitter. You're all done. You cannot do it anymore. No more talking trash to each other. Yeah, the fans like it or whatever, but my gosh, come on. They were so emotional before the game because everybody's, saying this, that, or the other. I think we looked very unfocused, Mississippi State, and I think they looked very much out of sorts. It's like they were too emotionally invested in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good sign when you have maybe the most emotional game in Mississippi State's history coming up on Saturday.
I know. Exactly. That's my point. It's like, so realistically, what are we going to finish? I mean, 8-4 would be great, in my opinion.
All right, Keith, do you think that this says more about MSU or more about Kentucky?
Well, for the sake of the podcast, I was going to go opposite of what Rose said, but he kind of straddled the fence and cartwheeled off of it to his death.
Rest in peace, Ro. Next We do want to honor our fallen comrade in this episode with a touching tribute at the end.
But I think you said it very well earlier that if this wasn't a wake-up call to the whole team, then it's definitely a wake-up call to head coach Joe Moorhead that even the perceived bad teams in the SEC can pull upsets against some of the perceived best. It's just how it works sometimes. Well, that's just football in general. I mean, we saw old Dominion pull the upset of a lifetime against VTech. So like stuff happens, and you've got to be ready to play every Saturday, and you've got to have a good game plan. I mean, rushing Callie Hill 4 times is not. That's not a good game plan. Like, I also think that the jumping to the conclusion of State's actually terrible is also not a good thing. You saw Florida fans do it 2 weeks ago. Is Kentucky a lot better than what everybody thought? Yeah. Is State a lot worse? Probably not. It's just one of those weird games. And as we said in the past, the Kentucky-Mississippi State game is always a really weird game. So chalk it up to maybe a first-time head coach's inexperience, but do better because, like you guys have said, it's going to get weird next week too.
Right, it's going to be real weird. All right, Chandler, what do you think? Which team does this say more about?
I think it says a lot about Kentucky, but I think it says more about Mississippi State because, like listening to the conversation about Mississippi State in the offseason was kind of weird to me because they were good last year, and they played well. They played well against Alabama, but they still got their brains beaten out by Georgia and Auburn. And so it was still like. There's a big gap between them and where it's perceived that they are, but the mantra continued to be, this is the most talented team Mississippi State's ever had. We got this great defense, we've got this experienced senior quarterback coming back, and I mean, there may be some truth to all that, but I had a lot of questions. I had a lot of questions about basically everything but the defensive line. I mean, Jeffrey Simmons and Montez Sweat, or Sweet, however you say his name. They are. Is it Sweat? What? No, my sister and brother-in-law corrected me a couple weeks ago. They're big State fans. They said it was Sweet, so I don't know.
Yeah, they're super wrong.
That's fine. But those guys are clearly incredible. And I mean, obviously, all the personal bias in the world against Leo Lewis, but I've watched him play football since he was a sophomore in high school, and I've never seen the hype. And
he also was flagged for a pass interference that was roughing the passer. That was a very interesting call as well.
Yeah. And so the Fitzgerald's accuracy questions, how good are the receivers, how good's the offensive line. I mean, I'm really concerned for State for a lot of those things because, like I said, it's only going to get worse. I mean, not necessarily worse for State, but the front sevens are only going to get better.
Right.
And so I think if because some of the things you can clean up the procedural stuff, you can clean up the false starts, all that kind of things. You can't make a left tackle more athletic all of a sudden. And so some of those kinds of things I think have kind of been answered about State, but they've got a great chance to rebound next week. They can come out next week and show, what, last week was a bummer, but it was an anomaly. And we're just going to keep rolling right along. So it'll be really interesting to see what goes. And that's why I didn't try to push having the eulogy for Joe Moorhead's honeymoon period this week,
right?
Because it could be over next week, big time. But anyway, I think it tells us a lot about State. It tells us a lot about both teams, but it tells us more about State.
Yeah, I don't think it says much long term about either team, but I think it says a little bit more about Kentucky actually being good enough in their strengths to cover up a lot of their weaknesses, and they're good enough in their strengths to cover up the fact that they don't have a passing game, and they really, as lengthy and long as that secondary is, they're still not necessarily a very good secondary.
Yeah,
they haven't really proven they're a good secondary, I do think that this was much more of an anomaly as far as Mississippi State goes, outside of like the false starts and everything. The offensive line had been very solid against weaker opponents, obviously, up until now. But the offensive line had been solid in blocking up until now. The Fitzgerald had been significantly more accurate up until now. The wide receivers dropped just about everything.
My God.
It's like apparently they had never seen rain before this weekend.
What is this thing called rain? I've never in my life heard of it.
Yeah, they just, it's like, they're like, why are my hands still wet? I can't understand.
Many of those passes in that 16 for 32 stat for Nick were right on the money. Like hitting guys in the chest and the freaking helmet and through the fingers. Like you can't. I mean, that's what sucks because it's like. Anyway, I don't want to get bogged down. I need to move on.
But yeah, no, I think I do. If I had to guess, I think this was more of an anomaly and more based around what we were just saying. It's a first-year head coach, and this was his wake-up call of, okay, so the first 3 weeks I was able to get away with a whole lot more, and now that we're in the conference, I've got to tighten up a bit. I mean, he's learning a lot, and this will be this weekend will be the test of whether or not he is learning off of that. So I do think it says probably more about Kentucky, in that Kentucky is good enough in their strengths to overcome a lot of their weaknesses, and that I don't think that this means that Mississippi State fans should suddenly expect to lose the rest of the season. But it should serve as a wake-up call for Joe Moorhead and his new coaching staff moving forward to, you're a head coach in the SEC now, you got to tighten things up a bit. All right, let's hit on two more games real quick before we get into looking ahead and predictions. Of course, Florida was able to roll up into Neyland Stadium and make those quiet 100,000 people even quieter. 47-21 was that score line. I'm going to turn over to you, Keith, real quick. What were the Gators able to do that Tennessee had no answer for?
The biggest thing was the run game finally got a little more established than it had in the last several weeks, which is hugely important. And their defense really showed up. A lot of Tennessee's yards came in garbage time whenever they were down by 27 or so, and Florida was getting reps in with their backups. But I think Florida's defense took that loss to Kentucky very, very, very personally because they got whipped up front badly by Kentucky. And I think Mullen did a good job of calling them out and putting them right in the spotlight, and they answered. They had a really good game this week. Of course, it helps that Tennessee gave Florida the ball 6 times.
It normally does, yeah.
Well, I didn't realize they had 6 turnovers.
They had 6 turnovers. They had 4 fumbles and 2 interceptions.
Incredible, dude.
Tennessee's terrible.
Florida's defense forced 2 turnovers on Tennessee's first 2 possessions on offense, and they were instantly up 14-0. So, there was one play that just encapsulated the entire game for Tennessee. It was like a 4th and 1 or 2 or something. The announcers were like, "No, you can't go for it here because it's on Tennessee's 45-yard line." Tennessee runs a really good play. Actually, runs like a play action bootleg, and then kind of reverses it and throws it to a wide open tight end who's just chugging down the field. Florida secondary comes out of nowhere, submarines them, and the guy just trips and throws the ball out of the back of the end zone.
That's awesome.
Oh man!
And that was the game. Jeremy Pruitt looked lost because
he is lost.
After they went down 14-0, he started panicking a little bit. He called an onside kick, and it looked like they never actually practiced it because the guy kicked it right to Piron, and he had 5 guys around him. Nobody cleared him out. They just let him jump up and get the ball. It was about as big of a disaster of a game as Tennessee could have possibly had, and it was delicious.
Yeah, it was pretty much all Florida, and all Florida all the time. Welcome to WROTC. But it was, and I'm sure that was extremely satisfying for Gator fans to look at that. I mean, just to get done with the first quarter and already have a 14-0 lead.
Gator fans and Chandler, apparently.
Yeah, and Chandler to enjoy that. But no, you're absolutely right. And the final matchup that's probably worth discussing here, and I'm going to turn over to you, Chandler, for this one. But
I did want to make a joke that we need to call Todd Grantham President Obama because he's shutting down Guantanamo Bay.
I like
terrible. It's terrible.
By the way,
Chandler's muted, and I'm no longer going to ask him about the Alabama A&M game. I'm going to give that to Roe instead. Sorry, Chandler.
Man.
Jarrett Garantino, Tano, or whatever the heck his name is, he was getting murdered every play. Like, he was getting hit by somebody on Florida's defense every play. And obviously
he was getting
that was game planned.
Terrorists with information.
He ended up sitting out a pretty good bit so that Keller Christ could come in and play. It was just such a disaster for them.
Is Keller Christ a transfer?
Yes, he's from Stanford, I think, actually.
Yep. All right. So now that we've gotten all of the Guantanamo Bay jokes out of the way.
Keller Christ's father's name is Jeep.
Wow.
EEP.
Huh.
Perfect.
All right. That
weird family.
Really derails any train of thought that I had.
Sorry.
Just in general.
A&M Alabama.
I know that's what we're supposed to be talking about, but that's not what I can think about. Like, I can't even start the conversation about it. It's weird. All right. I will turn it over to Roe.
All right. Yeah. What's up, dog?
Alabama was able to pull away from Texas A&M after about a quarter and a half. A&M put up a little bit of a fight, but of course, Bama, they are Bama, and they pull off a 45-23 victory there. Tua Tagovailoa, 387 passing yards and 4 touchdowns on 22 of 30 passing.
Pretty good.
It's pretty decent. Ro, what's your summation of this outcome here, Alabama versus A&M?
We are who they thought they were.
What?
Why do you continue to have trouble with that quote?
I don't know.
It's the second week in a row you've tried to make that quote.
No, it's I do it every week, every single week. I can't figure.
It's tradition.
Yeah,
Cameron getting muted and Roe messing up that quote is two things we can definitely
just
tell.
They are who they thought we were.
That's it. No, you got it that time.
Yeah,
and slowed it down and got it wrong again.
They are whatever. Yeah, Alabama was incredible. Nobody's stopping them. I mean, did you guys watch the game?
Part of it.
I don't mean that to sound like sassy or insulting. That I'm just genuinely being.
Did you guys even watch it?
I mean, come on. Do you guys even watch football?
You guys even football, bro?
You guys don't even football, bros. Only afterballs. No, Alabama is incredible this year. They are clearly going to the national championship. That's all I got to say about that.
Tua Tagovailoa Ravioli had his Heisman moment this entire game.
That's it. I mean, he is the 2-time preseason Heisman Trophy winner. So.
I think we're actually up to 6-time by now.
Wow, that's incredible. First player ever to win 6 different preseason Heismans.
He's going to win 30 Heismans before the year's over. Like 30 actual Heismans. Is over.
That's it. Chandler, Texas A&M in this game was able to put together a pretty good first quarter. It's not surprising that they couldn't keep up with Alabama. No team is probably going to be able to do that this season, but You watched A&M for a little bit here, and you in particular have been is impressed the right word with what what they're starting to put together under first year head coach Jimbo Fisher. But what's your take from the A&M right now after this performance? I mean, they were able to put up 23 points. It was still a loss, a big loss. But what's your take on the Aggies as of right now?
Yeah, I think they just don't have the talent to hang with Alabama, but I think they've got the talent to hang with anybody else in the SEC.
I don't think the New England Patriots right now, after watching some of Patriots and Lions, I don't think the Patriots have the talent to hang with Alabama right now.
The Cowboys.
Yeah, the Cowboys are terrible.
Oof, good grief.
What's their record right now, by the way?
1-2.
1-2. Yeah. Anyway, Kevin Sumlin recruited well, and the question for A&M this year, for me, was more so how do these good players fit into a system that's not necessarily the one that they signed up to play in. Kellen Mond is not a typical Jimbo Fisher quarterback, and I don't think that Jimbo Fisher is going to recruit guys like Kellen Mond going forward. But Kellen Mond has played very well in these last couple of games, and so. They did about what I thought they'd do. I thought they'd give Alabama a close game for a quarter and a half, and then Alabama would pull away because Alabama is so unbelievably deep. They're good. Obviously, their starters are all incredible, but they can put in their second, third, even fourth string guys and still be better than most of the teams they're lining up against. So Texas A&M faced a tall task all along. And a win was incredibly unlikely. But I think Texas A&M is showing they're going to be just fine under Jimbo. And the thing that I learned the most about Alabama was how much Alabama freshmen love hitting their jewels in their Ubers. That was the biggest thing that I took away from it.
Yeah, how was your first Alabama game day Uber driving experience?
Well, I had one kid pass out in the car at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and he just made it out of the car before he threw up, so that was nice. And
that's good timing.
And then picked up a couple of guys right after the game was over. They were only about a half a mile, maybe a mile from where they needed to go, but because of game day traffic and road construction, it took us 10.5 miles to get 1 mile away. 65 minutes, and I made $100 off of that one drive. So it was awesome.
That is incredible. Absolutely incredible. So week 4, of course, brought us 6 different SEC matchups. This week, week 5, has 5 different matchups to talk about. 3 of them in particular, we think have pretty clear favorites in them. And then 2 of them will be much more interesting to break down. So let's look at those first 3. And Tennessee has to go to Georgia. Chandler, this matchup right here, what are we looking at? Volunteers at Bulldogs.
I don't think this is going to go well for Tennessee. Georgia is really, really good, and Tennessee is really, really bad. And I know there's a certain extent to which we, I like to talk trash about Tennessee because Tennessee is horrible. They're so very bad, and they're such a absurd program. But I mean, they're like you have one team that's becoming Alabama of the East and clearly has separated themselves from everybody else. You have another team that is trying its best to become Ole Miss of the East. And so that's just not going to work out well for the Ole Miss of the East. And as much as I hate to compare my beloved alma mater to that dumpster fire of a program and school in Knoxville, I think there's a lot of similarities there that both teams have got to go through major teardowns and build-ups before they're back to being competitive. And I can't see a situation where Tennessee goes to Georgia and does anything but get absolutely blown out. There's not really one stat that you necessarily point to say that this is something we get a good indication of the game of. Because
you point at the win column.
Yeah, you
That's
point
the
at the
stat you point.
Yeah. I mean the win column and I mean just that there's just no there's no comparison right now. I mean the programs are so very far away. You just can't even you almost can't even talk about the two programs as being close to the same level as far as like national respect and things like that. I mean, Georgia's scoring 45 and giving up 13 a game. Tennessee's scoring 29 and giving up 22. That's just not going to get it done.
No, I don't think it is. This will be a tune-up game most likely for Georgia to prove that they are the top dogs in the East. Arkansas comes off of a week in which they got a riveting 3 points against Auburn.
Mm-hmm.
The final score, yeah. So Arkansas now has to travel to College Station and go up against A&M. Rode, tell us a little bit about what you think we'll see coming out of the Razorbacks and Aggies.
Well, A&M has a 2-2 record, and they're 0-1 in the SEC. It's not exactly indicative of the improvements the team has made this season. They've played all these teams pretty well, except for Alabama. You know, they're Alabama's Alabama. But they take on Arkansas, who is an abysmal 1-3 and 0-1 in the SEC. Last year, I think Arkansas took the Aggies to overtime. I'm pretty sure that was that game last year, and I think Arkansas won. This year, Arkansas has the new head football coach, Chad Morris, and things are not exactly going well. They lost to Eastern Illinois. They opened with a win over Eastern Illinois, and they lost to Colorado State. I read that wrong. But they are favored, Texas A&M is favored by 17 points. I think Texas A&M is going to win handily against this terrible Arkansas team. They are just not good. The Aggies have the sophomore sensation quarterback in Kellen Mond. And he's pretty good, you know, like we were talking about earlier when we talked about the Alabama game. He doesn't fit the Jimbo system, but he is very adequate, and he's also proven to be a dangerous runner. So I'm thinking Texas A&M by a lot, probably more than 17. I'd take the over if I was a betting man, which I'm debating it since it's legal now. So
that's another one of those weekly things. Is Rogue going to finally cave in? It's like he seems to resist it every single time.
I got a coupon sent to me through a text message from mybookie.com or whatever.
Nice.
I almost did it, but I didn't do it. I was like, I don't want to lose my family just yet.
Not yet.
That's a good thing to not lose.
Not yet. Ole Miss travels to Baton Rouge in the battle for whatever trophy it is that they do in that game.
It was just a failed project in somebody's woodshop class.
LSU has climbed up to number 5 in the latest AP poll. Ole Miss, of course, has been struggling a little bit here, but Chandler, would the Rebels have a chance in Death Valley?
Look, this is one of those games that always has the potential to be weird.
Yes.
You know, I've seen, I mean, it was just a couple of years ago when Ole Miss and LSU played. I believe LSU was number 6 in the country at that time. They had a quarterback by the name of Zach Mettenberger. They had a couple of wide receivers by the names of Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry.
Yep.
And literally every good player for Ole Miss was hurt to the point that the week before the game, they took a kid named Derek Jones, who had been a wide receiver, converted him to cornerback, and then said, "Hey, kid, go cover Odell Beckham Jr." And he did. He shut him down. I don't remember one single memorable Odell Beckham Jr. highlight from that game because a wide receiver from Eupora, Mississippi, shout out to the Eagles there, where the Roland clan hails from, because he shut him down. And so this game has got the potential to be weird every year. But here's the thing: Derek Jones is currently on an NFL roster, and we had this conversation in our text the other day that you can when you see an upset like this happen, where a team comes out of nowhere and beats a top 5, top 10 team, you can kind of look back and see, oh, that makes some sense. This defensive performance was really inspired because maybe this particular coach has got a really good scheme that gives them matchup trouble, or maybe you've got a couple of defensive players that are trying to that kind of put it together, and you look like, man, they're really talented. Ole Miss does not have good coaching on defense. Ole Miss does not have NFL talent on defense, and I think even if Ole Miss can score, because as good as their offense has been, they've struggled with really good defenses. And so I think even if Ole Miss can score, they're going to have a hard time stopping LSU's running game. And, stranger things have happened for sure, but I don't see it. I don't see it this year. I don't see it with Ole Miss. I don't see it with the defense that they have right now.
Yeah. I feel like we mentioned Mississippi State and Kentucky is always a weird game every year. I feel like most of the time, and it hasn't really necessarily been this way under Saban, of course, always, but Mississippi State and Alabama tends to be a weird game, and Ole Miss and LSU tends to be a weird game. And historically speaking, if Mississippi State plays against LSU, LSU just beats Mississippi State. And if Ole Miss and Alabama play, Alabama just beats Ole Miss. It's like always the flip-flop. I noticed that between the Mississippi teams going over to Alabama or going west to Louisiana. So, yeah, there's always something weird with this one, but it does seem pretty heavily favored for the Tigers in this particular matchup this year around, at least. South Carolina goes to Kentucky, prestigious Kroger Field. And in trying to do a little bit of research on like what some people are thinking here, I landed on a Sea of Blue, the SB Nation Kentucky Wildcat website. And I've been pretty open about this. I love SB Nation.
Mm-hmm.
I hate every fan-run team blog on SB Nation. Like very few of them are written coherently.
I would 100% agree with the statement you're making.
A lot of them are just have terrible grammatical errors and all of that. So I'm pretty biased against this sort of thing. But Sea of Blue refers to Benny Snell as a legitimate Heisman candidate. Yeah, so that's nice. But Westgate has technically given Snell's Heisman odds a bump from 300-1 to 200-1. So there you go. He is a 200-1 Heisman. So he is a legit Heisman Trophy candidate. Good for you, Benny Snell. Hope you enjoy that 200-1 because that won't really work against most other people.
But
South Carolina.
Don't bet it because if you do, you'll get your school in trouble.
Yes.
Other people can make money off of you, but you can do yourself.
So South Carolina, of course, had a game canceled or postponed or whatever it was, and then they came out and rebounded with a pretty strong victory over Vanderbilt, who had just the week before pushed the number 8 team in the country for a little while here. Kentucky is winning games. They're 4-0 for sure. South Carolina, though, is 2-1. That only one loss coming against the clear-cut right now number 1 team in the East. So South Carolina wants to come out here, go to Lexington, shut up Benny Snell, and win a game to prove that they happen to be, that they still are second best in the East. And then they have to beat Florida also. Whatever, it's a mess. But South Carolina is trying to prove a point here, and Kentucky's trying to keep their beginning of the season run going and hang on to a great start. South Carolina opened up as 2-point favorites. So basically opening up is basically we give a tiny edge, but it's not really. ESPN has on their Football Power Index predicting South Carolina to win with a 53.7% guarantee. So this is almost as even a matchup as you can possibly have going into the 5th week of the season. This, I think, might be the most entertaining game of the weekend. I think this is going to be the one to watch. If I had to predict one, South Carolina and Kentucky, this would be the one that I would be very, very interested to see more than anything else what comes out of this one. It'll be interesting. South Carolina needs to keep their offense together. They need to get Bentley and Deebo Samuel going along with their running back. Dang, why did I just forget his name? Had it right in front of me. Of course, I just closed that page. I'll pull it up.
Marcus Lattimore.
Yes.
That's it. God bless him. Love
He's
Marcus.
48 years old and still running the ball for him.
Yep. Rico Dowdle is his name. That's no wonder I forgot it. That's not exactly a common name, but Rico Dowdle, of course, just had a 112-yard.
Uncle Rico
just had a 112-yard performance against Vanderbilt. He's hoping to continue that, but Jake Bentley was able to throw for 261 yards as well. South Carolina is going to be coming in hoping that their defense is enough to shut down Snell and that their offense can do it there. And this is going to be hard. Kentucky, as we talked about, is a solid team. It's hard to give much favor to either one. So we'll talk about that when it comes time for predictions in just a moment.
I don't know. It's at the illustrious and prestigious Kroger Field in Lexington.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Keith, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Old Dan Merlins returns to Starksville, Mississippi.
Darn Merlins.
Florida travels to. This has been a matchup that's been circled on Mississippi State fans' calendars for almost a full year now. He's coming back to Starkville in this one. Mississippi State is coming off of a rough and embarrassing loss to Kentucky. There's a lot of motivation for the Bulldogs, but what do you see when you look at this Florida-Mississippi State matchup in terms of how you would break it down?
The old Dern Merlin Derby.
Oh, man.
There's one thing that Mississippi State and Florida have in common. Well, two. One of which is they've at one point been coached by Dern Merlin.
Right.
The other is that
they all wear jorts.
Yes. Yeah. they can console each other after getting embarrassed by Kentucky. This is going to be an interesting game for a variety of reasons.
Give me two reasons and no more.
Which two?
We don't do variety on this show.
I think that this game is going to come down to Felipe Franks and how he manages the offense against Florida or State's defense.
Playing against Florida, that's going to be weird.
Yeah, it's a strange one. It's an
inter-squad scrimmage with some Mississippi State jerseys. It's weird. But Franks hasn't been great. He hasn't been bad. He hasn't been great. But the big thing about Franks so far is that he's taken care of the ball and he's done a pretty good job leading the offense. There's still a lot of room for him to grow. Maybe he takes a step forward this week. But it's going to be challenging going to Starkville with those freaking cowbells cluttering up the atmosphere.
It's some sort of strange pollution, apparently.
Yes, noise pollution. Cancel. You know what? Florida's going to install some Bose noise-canceling headphones into their
we can just pretend that
helmets this week
in the night sky are just like shooting stars.
Wow. Wow.
The other thing, as Joseph talked about, is not necessarily how the team rebounds against State's loss to Kentucky, but more so about how Joe Moorhead rebounds from that loss. Because he's got a defense coming in that's much improved. They're going to be looking to prove a point against State's running offense. I think right now State's like a 9.5 point favorite or so. That might close down a little bit as the week goes on, but this looks to be like more of an even matchup than I think people thought that it would have earlier on in the season.
Is that it?
That's it.
For some reason, that didn't sound like the end of the sentence to me, so I was like,
I need a buzzer.
Yeah. Whew. There's the quick breakdown of the matchups. Gentlemen, I believe it's time for some predictions. What you guys think?
Dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun.
Yeah.
Let's predict away.
Let's
I
do
got
it.
these lines, baby.
Here's a
I'm
quick
all spread out
recap.
again.
Quick recap of week 4 as far as predictions go. Of course, none of us predicted Kentucky to pull off the upset over Mississippi State. So we all
Idiots.
missed that one. Chandler's the only one that predicted Vanderbilt to beat South Carolina. Chandler and I both predicted a Florida State victory. Keith and Rowe predicted Northern Illinois to pull it off. Chandler and I got that one. But outside, and of course, Chandler refrained from predicting Southampton versus Liverpool. Liverpool, of course, dominated that game. So out of that, in week 4, Chandler had 7 correct predictions. Keith and Rowe had 8 correct predictions. And somehow I led the way with 9 correct predictions. Almost entirely correct if I had predicted Kentucky to win. So right now, Rowe's in the lead with 42.
Yo!
Keith and I are tied with 41, and Chandler has slipped to 4th place with 40. Correct.
Dadgummit.
So there we go. All right, let's look at, if you're new here, this is what we always do. We always predict all the SEC games. We predict the Knowles.
Talking about the Knowles.
Talking about the Knowles.
One random prediction from something in the world that we have to make. Tonight is Chandler's.
Sadly, the WNBA finals are over.
Oh,
Oh, I'm pretty sure the Sparkle won again.
So anyway, Chandler's going to have to come up with one, and we'll get to that later on.
It's not a real team name.
Nope, it's not. Let's just move along before we get sued. Ooh, we going to get sued. Good Lord, we going to get sued. All right.
I don't know why they don't get paid as much as LeBron.
Let's go ahead and get into the SEC slate here. Next week, it's just going to be me by myself doing an entire podcast. No one else allowed. No one invited. All right. Louisiana Lafayette, or I'm sorry, just Louisiana. The Raging Cajuns traveled to Tuscaloosa. Keith, is there a spread on this one? You are the spread man.
Again, I'm all spread out for you, baby.
Oh my God.
Like I said, next week it's only me. All of you are banned. All of you are out of here.
Alabama is a 49-point favorite. I'm still going to take the over.
I feel like we're all picking Bama in this one, but if anyone wants to disagree with me, go ahead and state it. All right.
Forever.
Yeah.
Clear eyes, full hearts. Can't do it. No, dang it. I'm sorry.
2-2-2 forever.
Another non-conference matchup here that I think we all will predict the same way. Southern Mississippi goes up against Auburn. What's the score line, or what's the spread in this one, Keith?
Auburn's a 27.5-point favorite.
27.5. I've expected that to be closer to 49 as well, but all right. I feel like this one is unanimous as well, Auburn across the board. Anyone have any disagreements here?
No disagreement. I just remember in high school, for some reason, at our pep rallies, we would always do the SOUTHERN,
Yes.
Southern Mississippi, USM. We would always, like, our whole student body would do that cheer in high school. And, like, nobody from my high school went to Southern, but
Well, yeah,
we did it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, the weird thing about this is, I don't know if you guys saw, like the offensive stats from the Auburn and Arkansas game. Auburn was not good on offense.
No, Auburn's a mess on offense. And
They were terrible.
Like, they've got players. Like, their number one receiver after the LSU game was like, no, I'm out, and just transferred.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
So, yeah, they're 27.5-point favorites. I think they win, but Auburn's is in for a weird season
for Auburn's
yeah.
offense.
Yeah.
It is. It is. Southern Miss, though, is just not good this year as well.
Or other years.
There is that. But anyway, I'm going to assume we all pick Auburn. Yes?
Yeah.
You're here.
All right. Cool. Tennessee State and Vanderbilt, interstate rivals, going head-to-head here. Is there anything on this one, Keith?
Of course not.
Didn't think so. All right. Gentlemen, Chandler, who you picking?
Anchor down, baby.
Whew. Keith?
Give me the doors.
Ro?
I'll take Jordan Rodgers for 700, Alex.
No. If Jordan Rodgers was playing, I'd pick Tennessee State in a heartbeat. This is going to go against everything that I stand for as a person, but I'm picking Vanderbilt. So there we go. Vanderbilt is going to have to win this one. All right, jumping into some, I believe that's all of the non-conference games. So let's jump into the conference matchups. Arkansas going to Texas A&M. Well, I say going to. Is this game played in Texas? I have it written down here, or in Arlington. I have it written down that it's
played
in Dallas.
Oh, my mistake. Wow, this isn't even in College Station. I apologize to everyone. But Arkansas and Texas A&M in Dallas, in Arlington. Not Dallas, Arlington. Here we go. Got to be specific with it.
It's all one giant city anyway.
Right, exactly.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like saying anywhere outside of Atlanta. It's just Atlanta. The rest, it's like saying any other city in Georgia. It doesn't exist. It's all Atlanta. Keith, what's the spread?
Surprisingly, it's only a 17.5-point favorite. Texas A&M being so.
Wow, Chandler, who you picking?
I would pick A&M, and I would take the spread. I mean, yeah, I think they cover. Arkansas is real bad.
Yeah, they are.
Somehow they are way worse than even I thought.
Yep. It's not going straight. Not going too straight for them. I don't know what I meant by that. It's not the word I wanted to say. Keith?
12th man traveling to Arlington, getting it done. They're going to build a funeral pyre.
It's illegal to play. Ooh.
That's our obituary. Nice week, boys.
Yeah, I think Keith is predicting a eulogy for Arkansas next week.
That's my bold prediction.
There we go. Ro, who you got?
15 fingers are shown, followed by a T motion similar to a timeout signal, closed fists rotating around each other in alternating directions, hands clapped together, brought to right side of head, sleeping motion, rah, 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 team, farmers fight, farmers fight, 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 farmers fight. Who do you think that's...
What?
Who do you think that's a cheer up? Who do you think that's a cheer up?
Texas A&M.
That's Texas A&M. What is that?
I'm crying out of pure joy right now because that's the most beautiful cheer I've ever heard in my life.
What is that?
That's what you recite at the cult meeting before they pass out the Kool-Aid.
I thought you were
Aggies are so weird.
I thought you were literally reading out some sort of hand signal or like, yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
Thought he was telling me to steal third. Yeah.
Sign language.
Mm-hmm. Gonna have to go with Texas A&M here as well myself. There we go. All right, let's see. What should we do next? Let's go Tennessee and Georgia. Let's predict this one. What's the line, Keith?
There's not a spread, and there's a little
that's right.
tombstone emoji next to Tennessee.
Oh, let's do that.
It's gonna be like 58,000 points.
We might have to have a double eulogy
cover.
They're probably waiting to see if Garantano got hurt in the line. They're probably waiting to find out who the quarterback's going to be before they put the line out.
That's very true. So by the time this episode's released, there's no telling what it'll look like. But Chandler, you going with Georgia, I assume?
Yeah, whatever the line is, take it.
Keith, how about you?
I'm going to go to Georgia. Even though Tennessee has this weird habit of like every year beating somebody that they have no business in beating, it ain't going to be this game, Paul.
Have you seen Tennessee? Have you seen Jeremy Pruitt?
Yeah, I literally watched him yesterday.
Yeah, I don't.
Ro?
With heads bowed, hearts open. I'm longing for the days where they cried runs in Lindsey run into the end zone. Those beautiful Georgia halls and old Georgia started playing. I'm going with Georgia by 1,000 here, Paul.
Yeah, I think that's. I actually don't think that's enough. It's pretty conservative.
What the hell did you just say?
Ro just said someone's heart was open, so they should probably go to the hospital.
What even was that?
Rose had too many cookies.
There's a Corey Smith song. He's a UGA alumni who sings only about UGA football. He's the worst.
Oh,
He's
of course,
terrible.
we all know who that is. Then
Yeah,
I'm sorry you guys didn't go to college.
I did go to college.
yeah.
Our college could probably beat Tennessee.
It was like 10 years before you went to college, but I did go to college.
Oh,
I'm so old.
And I'm the youngest one here. All right. Georgia across the board on our predictions here. South Carolina and Kentucky. A very interesting matchup. I think will be the most entertaining one of the weekend. Keith, what's the line?
South Carolina's a 1-point favorite.
So there is none. Okay, good. Chandler, who you got?
Give me the Gamecocks.
Ooh, he's going Gamecocks.
Give me South Carolina.
Going with South Carolina on this one. What do you think, Keith?
At Kroger Field, one of the Stoops brothers said that he's about to knock down every door one at a time. Give me the Cats.
Kentucky. I just accidentally typed Kentucky down, which I think, given their offensive style, it makes sense. Ro, who you think?
Kentucky by a referee, Paul.
Yeah, it depends on who the officiating crew is here. I'm torn on this one, but I'm going to go with South Carolina. I think South Carolina comes in here, just understanding how much they have to prove against the Wildcats. And so I'm going to go with them. All right, Ole Miss at LSU. What's the line?
LSU is a 13.5-point favorite in Baton Rouge.
All right.
Wow.
Going down to Red Stick. Chandler, what you got?
I think LSU is going to cover that.
Keith?
Tigers.
Ro.
Swamp Magic yet again.
Yeah, I think the Tigers as well.
Gator rituals. Here it
Bum, 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 bum.
I hear those Gators.
All right,
Hold that Tiger.
there we go.
Here's
There we
that
go.
Tiger.
Finally, in the SEC, the big matchup, Florida going to Starkville, the return of dang old Dan Merlins to Starksville. What's the line on this one, Keith?
Mississippi State is a 7.5-point favorite at the Mullen Derby.
The Mullen Derby. Chandler, what you got in this one?
It's
a hard one.
It's a hard one.
The hard one.
It's a hard one. But I have no idea. So I think what's going to be really interesting is Florida's defense is still kind of good. I think, and I think if anybody knows Nick Fitzgerald, it's the guy that basically built him.
Right.
And so I don't know. I mean, this is going to be it's going to be such an emotional game on both sides. I think, and I think that Mullen at State kind of showed some weakness in emotional games, but I don't know, man. I think before the season, I thought State was going to win. I'm going to stick with that because that's what my gut says, but I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one. You're absolutely right. The emotions might be way too high. If the emotions were high going into the Kentucky game, then the emotions for this one might be way too high, especially with so many Mississippi State fans.
I mean, I think it's got the potential to really be a volatile environment. That there's just going to be obviously the cowbells and the noise and all that kind of stuff going on, and I think obviously you can't make a huge judgment on a coach after his first year one way or the other, but I think that for the sake of his legacy and for the sake of really kind of keeping the fan base relatively happy, I think State's got to win this game for Moorhead's sake. But I don't know. But I do think State's going to win.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me a little bit, I'm worried that it will end up being a little bit like the way that emotion impacted the Egg Bowl last year and how fans and responded so negatively in an emotional context that it was a weird, heavy environment, and it runs the risk of doing that this weekend as well. Keith, what do you think will happen in this one?
Well, I'm calling the game, so I can't make my prediction. But here are my 3 keys to the game.
Shut up, Mark Street.
Is your name Beth Moans too?
Yep, she's calling the game.
Well, this game is going to go a certain way for this team. She doesn't talk like that, but she's awful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Chandler in that I think that we all had this idea that Florida was going to be way worse than they probably have looked so far, and the state's going to be way better, and so the state's going to win this one going away. But it's like they're much more close than everybody initially thought. That being said, give me the Gators.
He's going with Florida. Ro, your thoughts?
My God, King! He's here! He's here!
What's that? What's that? Who's that in the distance? Is that the ghost of Nick Fitzgerald and the Mississippi State offensive line? Yeah, they're coming back in a big way there, Rowdy boys. Rowdy boys are coming back, getting all that Orgeron stuff out into this offensive line. It's gonna be great. State wins big.
What?
State wins big. State, they're bouncing back. It's happening.
What
It's happening.
happened?
Did you hear the music? The music gets them amped.
I think that the Kentucky game broke Roe.
This is no different.
I'm rallying the troops here, okay? Because we got to bounce back. So I'm picking State by landslide. All the Pauls. I'm taking huge bets this weekend at the boat.
All of the
Huge.
Pauls.
We are all named Paul. Yeah, this is
If only we'd all been named Dave, we could be on TV.
4 hot pockets named Paul.
those little 4 hot pockets named Paul. Good.
Oh gosh.
Lord. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna predict Mississippi State for mostly. I mean, this is a tough one to call, but mostly because I do think more than anything else, last weekend was a bit more of an anomaly than maybe it appeared, in terms of just the sheer amount of things that went wrong.
Oh, God.
So I'm picking Mississippi State in this one, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was somehow both over the spread and under the spread. Yeah. Anyway, Florida State has to go to Louisville in the Knowles matchup. Who we got? What's the line in this one, Keith?
Free Shoes University Criminals are 5.5-point favorites.
Wow. How bad must Louisville
How are
be?
they favored against?
How is that possible?
I don't know. Chandler, what you got?
My only experience seeing Louisville play this year has been against Alabama. So they look terrible, and I think they're generally just really, really bad. So I'm going to pick the Knowles.
All right, there we go. Keith, you have gone back and forth on whether or not you will ever pick Florida State again. What do you think here?
Well, as you all know, I'm calling this game, so I can't pick. But here are my 3 keys.
How many games are you calling?
He's everywhere this
All
weekend.
of them. I'm in the control center, Paul. I'm going to go Knowles.
Going with the Knowles. Ro?
I'm definitely going with Buy Petrina's motorcycle.
All right. I'm writing that down. Petrino's motorcycle. There we go. This is going to put my 4-week predicting Florida State correctly streak on the line, because I really feel unsure about this one in particular. But just looking at the raw numbers, there's not a whole lot of difference between the two, other than Florida State tends to average 373 yards of offense a game, and Louisville gives up almost 400 yards a game. Louisville only averages 284 yards of offense a game. Gosh. And Florida State gives up 376 yards a game. So Florida State gives up almost as many yards as they earn. On the other side, Louisville does not gain that many yards. So I'm going to go with the Criminals.
Numbers, and that's bad.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. All right, Chandler, it's up to you now. Hit us with the random prediction of the week.
Okay, so in honor of their massive program-defining upset last week,
oh yeah,
I'm going to say, guys, let's predict the Old Dominion East Carolina game.
Oh, I love it. Where's it being held?
It is at East Carolina, and I'll just give you some stats here, based on what ESPN.com is showing me. The quarterback for Old Dominion, B. LaRussa, don't even have his name, is 42 of 68 for 678 yards and 5 touchdowns on the season, where our Herring for Eastern Carolina is 77 of 145 for 852 yards and 3 touchdowns. It looks like Old Dominion might have the edge in rushing, but I don't know anything about this game, and I'm going to go ahead and here's a fun thing. This is on the little news ticker on the side that apparently Jeremy Pruitt is claiming that a Tennessee linebacker refused to enter the game, and now this linebacker is saying that's not true.
Yeah, the storyline was that he pulled a Buffalo Bills, whatever that guy's name was, and at halftime quit. And Pruitt basically said, no, he didn't quit. I told him not to come back or something. And then the guy said, no, none of that happened.
So this is just your reminder that things are going well in Knoxville. But no, you know what? Give me Old Dominion in this one. They're going to build off that last week. I don't care that they're scoring 26 and giving up 35 a game. They are 1-3 with their one win being Virginia Tech. Because college football makes sense.
What a win!
Totally.
Oh gosh, and they've lost to Liberty,
yep,
Florida International, and whoever Shar is.
Charlotte, probably.
Yeah. It is the Charlotte 49ers. But you know what? Who cares? Give me Old Dominion.
ODU. Hey, was there a spread in this one, Keith?
What
there should be.
Old Dominion.
What conference are they in?
I don't know.
Like the Sun Belt, maybe?
No, I'm pretty sure. Isn't East Carolina a Conference USA team?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, yeah. East Carolina's a 6.5 favorite.
All right. There you go.
Old Dominion ain't afraid of no lines.
No, Old Dominion don't care. Keith, who you got in this random matchup of the week?
Well, as you guys know, I'm calling this game, so I can't predict it. So I'll give you my 3 points.
Keith, you're not welcome back. Next week, Keith is gonna have to appeal to stay on the episode.
I feel like that deserves getting booted.
I'm gonna let him make his prediction, but yeah.
Give me the Pirates.
Give me the Pirates.
All right, and Keith is gone. Bro, who you got?
Oh God. In 1985, Steven Spielberg, he wrote a movie. In order to save their hometown from foreclosure, a group of misfits set out to find a pirate's ancient, valuable treasure.
Mm-hmm.
Unless these pirates at ECU have this One-Eyed Willie's ship locked up in a lagoon somewhere, it ain't happening. Old Dominion by 100.
Sweet.
I've now kicked Roe out too.
It's like the Royal Rumble.
This is it. I'm going to go with East Carolina, and in particular, I'm going to give a shout-out. He's not at East Carolina anymore, but I want to give a quick shout-out to former East Carolina quarterback, now at Washington State.
Gardner Minshew, Brandon
coming from Northwest Mississippi Community College and Brandon, Mississippi. Gardner Minshew II, grad student at Washington State. I'm going to go with ECU and mercifully just end this entire podcast. I'm Joseph Craven.
I'm Chandler Rowland, and I made it to the end for the first time in a long time.
Though I do want to point out that it is pronounced Rowland.
It is not.